poor black mother buys a cursed mansion for just $100 to start a new life with her daughter. But when they uncover what was buried behind its walls, their discovery shakes the entire city. Watch till the end. You won't believe how this story ends. Subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The rain had stopped just before dawn, leaving the streets of Brookhaven slick and gray, the kind of morning where every sound carried farther than it should. Samantha Holloway walked fast, her coat pulled tight, a stack of old newspapers clutched under her arm. Behind her, a girl followed silently. 14, wiry, sharp-eyed, her daughter, Leah. They didn't talk much anymore. There wasn't much left to say when you'd lost everything. For 3 months, they had been sleeping wherever they could. A church basement, a borrowed sofa, sometimes in the back seat of Samantha's old Toyota that coughed like it was dying too. Once, they had a home. Once, there had been laughter, but that was before the trial, before the man who killed Samantha's husband walked free with nothing more than a fine and an apology that never reached her ears. Now, she was broke, tired, and invisible. They stopped at the diner on the corner, not to eat, but because someone had left a stack of classified papers near the trash bin. Samantha pulled one out, scanning it with a mechanical sort of hope, the kind you force yourself to feel because the alternative is given up. Between ads for roofing repairs and cheap furniture, a small notice caught her eye. City property sale. Large residence, urgent, low price. She almost skipped over it. Then she saw the address. Brookhaven locals didn't need directions to that place. Everyone knew it. The Rossini Mansion. "Mom," Leah said carefully, "that's the Mafia house." Samantha folded the paper. "That's the opportunity we have." Leah stared, her breath fogging the cold air. "For real? You're going to move us into that thing?" Samantha looked at her daughter, the dark circles under her eyes, the thinness in her cheeks, and thought of the nights Leah had pretended to sleep so her mother wouldn't see her crying. "It's a roof, Leah. A roof and 4 walls. We don't get to be picky." The Rossini Mansion stood at the end of an overgrown drive surrounded by tall, leafless oaks that clawed at the fog. Even from the road, it looked wrong. Too grand, too heavy, like something built to keep the world out. Its iron gates leaned inward, as if they too were tired of standing guard. The realtor waited by the fence, his breath steaming in the morning chill. He was middle-aged, white, with a forced smile and the kind of tone people used when talking to someone they didn't respect but couldn't legally ignore. "You really want to see this one?" he asked. "Most folks don't last 5 minutes inside. It's got a history." "I read about it," Samantha said evenly. "You said $100, right?" He blinked. "Technically, yes. The city just wants it off the books, but it's not exactly livable. I've lived in worse." Leah muttered, "That's not a brag, Mom." The man sighed and pushed the gate open. It groaned like something waking up after a long, dark sleep. Inside, the driveway was cracked and littered with wet leaves. The air smelled of mold and old iron. When they reached the front steps, Samantha paused, her gaze traveling up the stone facade, the shattered window panes, the ivy strangling the balconies, the double doors scarred by weather and time. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Leah looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Beautiful? It looks haunted." Samantha turned the handle. The door creaked open with a low, breathy moan. The air inside was colder than outside. Dust hung like fog, catching the faint light that slipped through the broken windows. The floor was black and white marble, cracked and uneven. An old chandelier hung above, still holding a few crystals that trembled with every gust of wind. In the corner, a grand piano sat under a white sheet. Samantha brushed her hand over it. A cloud of dust rose, glittering in the gray light. Leah shivered. "If something jumps out, I'm leaving." "Then we'll leave together," Samantha said, her voice soft but steady. They wandered through empty rooms, a ballroom with torn curtains, a library that smelled of mildew and tobacco, bedrooms filled with broken furniture and silence. Every step echoed like footsteps behind them. "People say the guy who owned this place disappeared," Leah murmured. "Like, they never found the body." "People say a lot of things," Samantha replied. "Doesn't make them true." But she felt it too, the heaviness, the sense that the walls remembered everything that had happened here and didn't want to forget. They stopped in the main hall. The realtor cleared his throat. "Look, ma'am, officially, the structure's condemned. The city isn't responsible if—" "I'll sign whatever you need," Samantha interrupted. "Right now." He blinked. "You haven't even seen the upstairs." "I don't need to." "Ma'am, I don't think you understand." "No," she said, fixing him with a gaze that made even him flinch. "I understand perfectly. This place is broken, unwanted, and everyone's afraid of it. So am I. But that's not a reason to walk away. That's the reason to stay." The man stared at her for a moment, then handed her the papers. "Fine. It's your funeral?" That night, the house groaned and whispered. Rain tapped the roof like restless fingers. Samantha lay awake on the floor of the old master bedroom, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of gasoline. Leah was beside her, flashlight in hand, eyes darting at every creak. "You think it's true?" the girl whispered. "The stuff people say? That he buried people in the walls?" Samantha exhaled slowly. "I think fear's easier to believe than truth." Leah turned the light off. Darkness swallowed them whole. "Mom," she said quietly after a while, "what if we can't fix this place?" Samantha reached for her daughter's hand. "We will, because nobody else will." Silence again. The kind of silence that feels alive. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Inside, the old house settled, its bones creaking like an animal shifting in its sleep. Leah pressed closer. Samantha didn't move. "This is our home now," she whispered into the dark. Somewhere in the distance, a shutter slammed, echoing like an answer. By morning, the cold had settled into the house like it had paid rent. Samantha could see her own breath when she sat up. Her spine ached from sleeping on hardwood and her hands were numb, but she was awake before Leah. She always was. You don't get the luxury of sleeping in when the world has already tried to take everything from you. She checked the front door first, then the back entrance, then the kitchen window which didn't lock. Habit. Living poor teaches you caution like it teaches you hunger. Steady, constant, bone deep. Leah woke up wrapped in 2 jackets and still shivering. "Are we still alive?" "For now," Samantha said. "Congratulations. You survived night 1 in the haunted mansion." Leah made a face. "Don't call it that." "What, haunted?" "No. Mansion. That implies heat." They ate quietly. What passed for breakfast. 2 granola bars from Samantha's bag and half a bottle of water split between them. After that, they got to work. There was no plan. The plan was survive. Samantha started in the main hall, pulling down rotting curtains and piling them in a corner. Leah took the smaller rooms one by one, sweeping broken glass into a metal bucket, dragging junk out of closets, opening windows that hadn't tasted air in 20 years. Every movement threw new dust into the air. Every breath tasted like old wood, mold, and somebody else's life. By noon, Both of them were coated in gray. Leah wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist and left a dark streak of skin under the dirt. "Do you think anyone's going to help?" she asked, not looking at her mother, pretending it was just a casual question. "No," Samantha said simply. Leah snorted. "Good. I didn't want them here anyway." That was a lie, and they both knew it. Outside, voices drifted from the street. Boys, teenagers, laughing. "Yo, check it out. They're actually in there. Get a video. Get closer. Hey, lady, you see any dead bodies yet?" Leah froze. Samantha didn't. She stepped into the doorway, looked straight at them, and said nothing. She just stood there, shoulders square, face unreadable. The boys kept laughing, but softer now. They didn't come through the gate. That was enough. By afternoon, the first miracle happened. It didn't look like a miracle. It started with Leah complaining. "Mom," she called from the second floor, "something's wrong with this wall." Samantha was in what used to be the dining room trying to decide if the long table was salvageable or a tetanus risk. What kind of wrong? The kind that sounds wrong. Samantha climbed the stairs, boots echoing on the marble like footsteps that didn't belong to her. The hallway up there was long and dim, lined with tall doors and peeling wallpaper the color of dead flowers. Halfway down, Leah was crouched beside a massive wardrobe that looked like it had been left there on purpose. Not like furniture, like a barricade. Leah slapped her palm lightly against the wall behind it. Thud. Then she moved 2 feet to the left and hit the wall again. Thud. Then she moved back to the spot that felt wrong and hit the wall again. Hollow. Samantha narrowed her eyes. Again. Leah did it again. Samantha heard it this time. A difference. Not huge, but there. Her heartbeat picked up. "Help me move this," she said. Leah blinked. "That thing weighs like a dinosaur. Then push like you're not planning to starve this winter." They shoved their shoulders into it together and pushed. The wardrobe groaned in protest, scraping across aged floorboards, coughing up sawdust and spider webs that caught in their throats. It was heavier than it had any right to be. Samantha felt it in her back immediately. Leah hissed through her teeth, but didn't stop. "Keep going," Samantha said, jaw clenched. "Why is crime furniture so heavy?" Leah muttered. "It's probably oak. It's probably cursed." They dragged the wardrobe out just far enough to reveal the part of the wall it had been hiding, and that was when Leah whispered, "Oh, the wallpaper didn't match. It almost matched. Same pattern. Pale vines on a beige background. But up close, you could see it." The repeat was off by less than an inch. The texture was newer. And at the baseboard, where half the trim had rotted away, you could see brick. Fresh brick. Or at least fresher than the rest of this place. Someone had sealed something here. Not decades ago when the house was still alive. After everything fell apart. After it was empty. Samantha touched it. Her fingertips traced the uneven line where the plaster met the molding. Her palm lay flat and felt it, colder than the other walls, denser in places, thin in others. Her skin prickled. "Leah," she said quietly, "go get me something I can use to break this." Leah's eyes widened. "Like a hammer? Or like a priest?" "The hammer's faster." Leah ran. When she came back, she had a rust-flecked hammer she'd scavenged from a drawer near the old kitchen and a flathead screwdriver. "This is so illegal," Leah whispered and handed them over like contraband. Samantha didn't answer. She wedged the screwdriver between 2 bricks and hit the end with the hammer. The sound rang down the hallway. Sharp, hollow, wrong. The first chip of plaster cracked. Dust exploded out in a soft gray breath, and Leah coughed, covering her mouth with her sleeve. Samantha worked slowly, not carelessly, deliberately. She didn't smash. She pried. Brick by brick, layer by layer, piece by stubborn piece, like she was unsealing a throat that had been forced shut. Sweat gathered at her hairline. Dust clung to her eyelashes. Her shoulders burned. Leah knelt beside her, watching every movement with tense, bright focus. "Mom," she whispered, "what if it's a body?" "Don't talk," Samantha said through her teeth. "What if it's drugs?" "Don't talk." "What if it's money?" "Definitely don't talk." The first brick came loose with a sound like a bone leaving a joint. Behind it was darkness. Real darkness, not just shadow, the kind that swallows light. Samantha leaned closer, squinting into the gap. The air that seeped out was colder than the hallway and carried a faint smell, not rot, metal, oil, dust, and iron. Leah peered in over her shoulder. Is that a space, like a hidden room?" "Too small to stand in," Samantha murmured, "more like a cavity." "A cavity," Leah repeated under her breath. "Like a tooth? Oh my God, if this house has teeth, I'm moving out." Samantha widened the hole, pulling another brick, then another. Each one fought back like it wanted to stay. She ignored the tremor in her arms and kept working until the opening was roughly square, just wide enough for her to reach through. Leah leaned in. "Do you see anything?" Samantha slid her hand into the dark. Her fingers brushed stone, then cold metal. Her heart jumped. "I've got something," she said quietly. She gripped it, pulled, and for a second it resisted, like it was hooked to the house itself. Then, with a harsh scrape, it came forward. They both stared. It was a box. Not big, maybe the size of a toolbox. Heavy, pitted with age, and sealed with a rusted latch. It was the kind of thing you only see in movies, right before someone says, "No matter what happens next, don't scream." Leah swallowed. "Okay, so, question." "Are we about to get murdered?" "Hopefully not today." Samantha carried the box into the next room where more light came in through a cracked window. She set it on the floor, knelt, and tried the latch. It didn't open. Leah crouched across from her, hands on her knees, eyes huge, voice low. "If there's a finger in there, I'm throwing up on the floor and it's not my fault." "Leah, I just feel like you should be emotionally ready for that." Samantha slid the screwdriver into the seam and twisted. The latch snapped with a brittle little pop. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Samantha lifted the lid. Inside, there was no gold, no weapons, no little velvet bag of diamonds that would fix their life in 1 second. The world is almost never kind in 1 second. What there was paper, stacks of it, old, yellowed, edged in curled fibers, tied with a cracked strip of leather. Beneath that, a small brown notebook worn nearly smooth with touch. Leah let out a breath like she'd been punched. "That's it? Paper?" Samantha didn't answer. Her hands were shaking. She had seen a lot of things in her life. She had seen charity that wasn't actually charity. She had seen men apologize to cameras that never even looked in her direction. She had seen a courtroom where the word accident was used like a knife. But she had never seen this. Slowly, carefully, Samantha untied the leather strip and opened the first bundle. The top page wasn't printed. It was handwritten. The handwriting was clean, angled, steady, not rushed, not panicked, careful. The first line was dated March 14th, and under that, "For those who will never hear what really happened." Leah leaned in. Her shoulder touched her mother's. "Who wrote it?" Samantha answered without meaning to. "Him." Everyone in Brookhaven knew the name, even if they pretended not to. Domenico Rossini. The man whose empire whispered under the streets. The man who made people lower their voices without knowing why. The man who built this house and then vanished like smoke. Leah swallowed. "You're kidding." "No." Samantha turned the page and began to read. "I know what they call me. I earned some of it. I won't dress it up. I did things I'm ashamed to write down. I did worse things I'm not going to write down at all. But they will tell a story about me when I'm gone, and the story will be easy. People like easy stories. Monster dies. City is clean. That's what they want. That is not the truth." Leah's mouth had parted, but she didn't speak. Samantha kept reading, her voice low, steady, controlled, but Leah could hear the tremor under it. "You cannot wash blood with silence. You can only drown in it. I thought I could build something and keep my hands clean because I never pulled the trigger myself. That was a lie. Every brick in this house is mine. Every bruise it ever heard is mine. Every scream that stopped too fast is mine. You hear me? I know what I am. But if you're reading this, then I did one thing right before they erased me." Samantha paused. Leah whispered, "Mom, what does he mean erase?" Samantha didn't answer. She just turned the page. "After my wife died, I tried to keep going the same way. Pretend the world is numbers and muscle. Tell myself you can control anything if you can pay for it. Then I started seeing kids. Not mine. Other people's. Kids sleeping in cars. Kids with no one to stand up in front of them and say, 'She stays with me. He's not going anywhere.' Kids you can buy for less than you spend on a watch. You think hell is fire. Hell is a 14-year-old pretending she's fine." Leah froze. Her throat worked. Her eyes flicked up to her mother, then back to the page. Samantha kept reading. "I don't have a clean name to give them. I can't stand in front of a judge and say I deserve to be trusted. I won't be forgiven in public. That's not how this ends. But I can do this. I can take what I built in dirt and give it to them anyway. Not cash in a bag, not a favor. Something they can keep. A house no cop can raid without a warrant, and no suit can sell without looking like he strangled a baby to do it. Casa della Luz. House of Light. That's what she called it, my wife. She said if I ever wanted to sleep again, I needed to put something in this world that wasn't about me. I didn't listen when she was alive. I'm listening now." Leah exhaled shakily. "Mom, is he saying, yes, he wanted this place to be for kids, like a shelter?" Samantha whispered, barely audible. "He wasn't hiding money, he was moving it." She lifted another sheet. The next papers weren't diary style. They were cold, labeled, stamped. Leah frowned. "What is that?" "Bank transfers," Samantha murmured. "Is that a lot?" "It's a lot." "How much is a lot?" Samantha didn't answer. Her eyes were jumping over every line, hungry, fast, sharp, account names, trust language, a designation that repeated again and again, Casa della Luz Trust. Beneficiary, minors in need of housing and protection. Executor, to be named at fulfillment. Her pulse was now in her throat. This wasn't just a confession or a letter to a ghost. It was structure. It was legal. It was intent. He hadn't just felt guilty. He had built a plan, and someone had tried to bury it. "Mom," Leah whispered, "do you understand what this is?" Samantha let out a slow breath. "Yeah," she said, "I do." Leah's eyes shone. "Then say it so I can, too." Samantha looked up at her daughter. "This house wasn't supposed to be a tomb," she said. "It was supposed to be a refuge." Leah sat back on her heels. She didn't speak for a long moment. Her face had gone still in a way that made her look older than 14. Finally, she said quietly, "So, it's ours?" Samantha blinked. "What?" Leah lifted her chin. "It's ours. He built it for kids like the ones we see sleeping behind the grocery store dumpster. For kids nobody defends. For kids like—" She stopped, like me. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Samantha reached out and touched her cheek. "Leah, I'm serious." Leah swallowed. "Mom, listen. Everybody out there laughs at us. They're all waiting for us to run. Oh, look, the crazy woman and her daughter moved into the murder house. But we're not crazy. We're exactly what this house was for." The words landed deep. Samantha hadn't realized how badly she needed to hear them until she did. For months, it had been survival, survival, survival. One bad day taped to the next, pretending tomorrow existed. She hadn't let herself imagine more than make it through the night. But now, with the papers spread across the dusty floor, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about claiming. "This is why they called it cursed," Leah said suddenly. Samantha looked at her. "What?" Leah's eyes were hard now, cold, young and already done believing in accidents. "If people think a place is cursed, they stay away, right? They don't go in. They don't look. They don't ask questions. Nobody was supposed to find this." Samantha stared at her daughter. Leah didn't blink, and for the first time Samantha understood what the city had been doing all these years. Not protecting people from the house, but protecting the story from people. Leah leaned forward again, voice low and fierce. "Mom, he tried to do something good. They buried it. You found it. So now you have to finish it." "Leah." "No." Leah shook her head. "No, Mom, look at me. You always tell me nobody's coming to save us. Fine. So we save somebody else." Samantha closed her eyes. It wasn't fear she felt. Fear she knew well. Fear lived under her skin like a heartbeat. This wasn't that. This was something heavier. Responsibility, the kind that didn't ask if you were tired, the kind that didn't care if you were ready. She opened her eyes again and nodded once. "Okay," she said quietly. "Then we finish it." Leah let out a breath that sounded almost like relief. Downstairs, somewhere deep in the old pipes, something shifted and banged. A hollow metal echo that rolled through the halls like a distant knock. Leah flinched. "Please tell me that was the heating waking up and not, like, a ghost." "We don't believe in ghosts," Samantha said. "We didn't used to believe in secret mafia safes either, but here we are." Samantha almost smiled. Almost. She gathered the documents into a careful stack, then lifted the small brown notebook. It was simpler than the others, almost plain, the edges softened by touch. When she opened it, she saw the same hand, but the writing here was tighter. Personal. The first page said, "To whoever finds this house after I'm gone, please understand. I can't fix what I did. I can't pull bullets back out of bodies. I can't unscare the children I've already scared. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to finish what I started." Leah whispered, almost reverent. "Mom, he's talking to you." "No," Samantha said softly. Her voice shook in a way Leah had almost never heard. "He's talking to us." They sat there for a long time on the dusty floor of a hallway. No one had walked in for decades, with the cold air sneaking in through the cracked windows and the weight of a dead man's confession between them. Outside, the world kept moving. Traffic hummed in the distance. Somewhere, someone laughed. Somewhere, someone said her name with a sneer. In here, time had stopped. Finally, Leah broke the silence. "So, what do we do next?" Samantha lifted her head. Her eyes were steady now. "We prove it's real," she said. "We prove he meant it. We make them listen. And then, Leah swallowed. Then what? Samantha exhaled. Then we opened the door. Leah blinked. To who? Whoever needs it, Samantha said. Her voice was calm, final. Something in the house seemed to settle at that, like it had been holding its breath for years and had finally been given permission to exhale. Leah nodded once, slow. Okay, she whispered. Okay. She wiped her nose with the back of her wrist, pretending she wasn't shaking. Then she stood. Good, she said, because this place still smells like dead raccoon, and I'm not letting anyone in here until we clean it. Samantha huffed out a small, startled laugh. It sounded like the first warm thing this house had heard in 20 years. That night, they didn't sleep right away. Samantha sat at the old dining room table, the one she'd decided might not actually kill them with splinters, and spread out the documents under the yellow circle of a battery lantern. She read every page twice. She traced her finger along the trust language until she understood it. She whispered the words Casa de la Luz like a promise, like a prayer. Leah sat across from her, chin on her arms, eyes heavy but determined to stay awake. At some point, Leah murmured, almost sleep-drunk, "Mom?" "Yes, baby." "If anybody comes here scared," she mumbled, "we're not turning them away, right?" Samantha looked up, her throat tightened. "No," she said softly, "we're not." Leah's eyes finally closed. Samantha watched her for a long time. 14 years old. 14. And already she understood the world the way most adults refuse to. Samantha turned back to the papers. She wasn't naive. She knew what this meant. If the documents were real, they were dangerous. If the money was real, somebody powerful had made sure it stayed buried. If she pushed this into daylight, she wasn't just cleaning a house. She was picking a fight with people who didn't lose. But she also knew something else. She knew what it felt like to beg for help and be told, "There's nothing we can do." She had heard those words from cops, from judges, from school administrators, from social workers reading off scripts like call center agents. She had heard those words so many times they had stopped sounding like words and started sounding like a door slamming in her face. Not this time. Not in this house. She gathered the notebook, pressed her palm flat against its cover, and whispered into the empty room, "I heard you." Wind moved through a broken pane upstairs and hummed low through the hall. Samantha raised her head. "I heard you," she repeated, louder this time. "We'll finish it." The house, as if in answer, creaked low in its bones. Not threatening, not warning, acknowledging, welcoming, claiming. By the time Samantha finally let her forehead rest on her folded arms, the lantern still glowing beside her and the papers laid out like evidence in a case that hadn't yet been filed, the decision was already carved into her. Tomorrow she would start. Tomorrow she would make the first call. Tomorrow Brookhaven would stop laughing. And, in the silence before sleep took her, one final thought formed and settled in her mind like a brand. This house is not cursed. It's waiting. The morning sun crept weakly through cracked windows, cutting dusty lines across the marble floor. Samantha Holloway stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled to her elbows, staring at the stack of documents she had carefully laid out the night before. They looked almost fragile under the light. Old paper, faded ink, one small notebook that had changed everything. Leah appeared in the doorway, barefoot, her hair a messy halo of curls. "You didn't sleep again," she said softly. Samantha didn't look up. "Couldn't." Leah walked over and leaned against the counter. "You're really going to do this, huh? Make it real?" Samantha finally met her eyes. "It is real, baby. The only question is whether the city's going to admit it. The first phone call was short. The second was colder. By the third, Samantha had learned how to stop apologizing for asking. She called the clerk's office, the property commission, the archives department, each one giving her the same rehearsed politeness that meant, "Please go away." "Ma'am," one voice said, too patient, too professional, "that case is ancient history. There's no active file for a Domenico Rosini trust." "There's paperwork," Samantha insisted, "with signatures, bank stamps, notarized transfers. Then bring it in, but I can't promise it'll change anything." "Oh, it'll change something," she said quietly before hanging up. She spent the afternoon printing copies at the library downtown. People stared, not openly, but in that way that made her skin crawl. A black woman in worn jeans, standing over a copier, muttering to herself about trust funds and hidden ledgers. It was easier for them to think she was crazy than right. Leah sat nearby, earbuds in, pretending to read while watching every person who came too close. When they left, Samantha felt eyes on her all the way to the car. The first real warning came that night. A rock through the window. It landed in the main hall, glass scattering across the marble floor like ice. The note was tied around it with red string. One sentence, printed in black marker, "Stop digging or you'll be next." Leah froze when she saw it. Samantha didn't. She picked it up, read it once, then crumpled it and dropped it into the trash. "We're not stopping," she said flatly. "Mom," Leah whispered, "what if it's not just talk?" "It's always talk, until someone calls them on it." But when she turned away, Leah saw the tremor in her mother's hands. By the end of the week, the phone calls started. No name, no number, just breathing. Once, a man's low voice, "You think you're doing God's work? You're just stirring ghosts." Click. Leah started sleeping with a baseball bat beside her bed. Samantha told her it was fine, that people only threatened what scared them, but at night she sat awake on the stairs, the hammer from the hidden wall beside her, listening for footsteps that weren't theirs. The next morning, a lawyer called back. "Miss Holloway." The voice was old, rough. "Howard Caldwell, retired attorney, used to handle estate cases in this district. Someone passed your name to me. Said you found something the city lost." "I'll sign whatever you need," Samantha interrupted. "Right now." He blinked. "You haven't even seen the upstairs." "I don't need to." "Ma'am, I don't think you understand." "No," she said, fixing him with a gaze that made even him flinch. "I understand perfectly. This place is broken, unwanted, and everyone's afraid of it. So am I. But that's not a reason to walk away. That's the reason to stay." The man stared at her for a moment, then handed her the papers. "Fine. It's your funeral?" That night, the house groaned and whispered. Rain tapped the roof like restless fingers. Samantha lay awake on the floor of the old master bedroom, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of gasoline. Leah was beside her, flashlight in hand, eyes darting at every creak. "You think it's true?" the girl whispered. "The stuff people say? That he buried people in the walls?" Samantha exhaled slowly. "I think fear's easier to believe than truth." Leah turned the light off. Darkness swallowed them whole. "Mom," she said quietly after a while, "what if we can't fix this place?" Samantha reached for her daughter's hand. "We will, because nobody else will." Silence again. The kind of silence that feels alive. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Inside, the old house settled, its bones creaking like an animal shifting in its sleep. Leah pressed closer. Samantha didn't move. "This is our home now," she whispered into the dark. Somewhere in the distance, a shutter slammed, echoing like an answer. By morning, the cold had settled into the house like it had paid rent. Samantha could see her own breath when she sat up. Her spine ached from sleeping on hardwood and her hands were numb, but she was awake before Leah. She always was. You don't get the luxury of sleeping in when the world has already tried to take everything from you. She checked the front door first, then the back entrance, then the kitchen window, which didn't lock. Habit. Living poor teaches you caution like it teaches you hunger. Steady, constant, bone deep. Leah woke up wrapped in 2 jackets and still shivering. Are we still alive? For now, Samantha said. Congratulations. You survived night 1 in the haunted mansion. Leah made a face. Don't call it that. What, haunted? No. Mansion. That implies heat. They ate quietly. What passed for breakfast? 2 granola bars from Samantha's bag and half a bottle of water split between them. After that, they got to work. There was no plan. The plan was survive. Samantha started in the main hall, pulling down rotting curtains and piling them in a corner. Leah took the smaller rooms one by one, sweeping broken glass into a metal bucket, dragging junk out of closets, opening windows that hadn't tasted air in 20 years. Every movement threw new dust into the air. Every breath tasted like old wood, mold, and somebody else's life. By noon, both of them were coated in gray. Leah wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist and left a dark streak of skin under the dirt. Do you think anyone's going to help? She asked, not looking at her mother, pretending it was just a casual question. No, Samantha said simply. Leah snorted. Good. I didn't want them here anyway. That was a lie, and they both knew it. Outside, voices drifted from the street. Boys, teenagers, laughing. Yo, check it out. They're actually in there. Get a video. Get closer. Hey, lady, you see any dead bodies yet? Leah froze. Samantha didn't. She stepped into the doorway, looked straight at them, and said nothing. She just stood there, shoulders square, face unreadable. The boys kept laughing, but softer now. They didn't come through the gate. That was enough. By afternoon, the first miracle happened. It didn't look like a miracle. It started with Leah complaining. Mom, she called from the second floor, something's wrong with this wall. Samantha was in what used to be the dining room trying to decide if the long table was salvageable or a tetanus risk. What kind of wrong? The kind that sounds wrong. Samantha climbed the stairs, boots echoing on the marble like footsteps that didn't belong to her. The hallway up there was long and dim, lined with tall doors and peeling wallpaper the color of dead flowers. Halfway down, Leah was crouched beside a massive wardrobe that looked like it had been left there on purpose. Not like furniture, like a barricade. Leah slapped her palm lightly against the wall behind it. Thud. Then she moved 2 feet to the left and hit the wall again. Thud. Then she moved back to the spot that felt wrong and hit the wall again. Hollow. Samantha narrowed her eyes. Again. Leah did it again. Samantha heard it this time. A difference. Not huge, but there. Her heartbeat picked up. Help me move this, she said. Leah blinked. That thing weighs like a dinosaur. Not lost, she said, buried. He was silent a long moment, then, mind if I stop by? Caldwell arrived that afternoon in a car older than Leah. His suit was wrinkled, his tie crooked, his expression unreadable. He moved slowly through the hall, tapping the walls with his knuckles, eyes sharp behind tired lids. When Samantha laid the papers out on the table, he didn't sit right away. He just looked, long and quiet. Finally, he said, "If this is fake, it's a damn masterpiece. But if it's real—" "It is real," Samantha said, "and you're about to make enemies you didn't even know existed." "I already have." He studied her a moment longer, then nodded. "All right, Miss Holloway, let's give the devil some daylight." 2 days later, her story hit the local news, not a big headline, just a 3-minute segment buried between weather and sports. But it was enough. Local woman claims city buried mafia trust for orphans. The footage showed Samantha standing outside the mansion gates, holding the old notebook. The reporter spoke over her. She says the late crime boss, Domenico Rossini, created a charitable trust for children before his disappearance, a trust the city never honored. Leah watched from the couch, half proud, half terrified. "They're going to hate you for this," she said quietly. "I don't need them to like me," Samantha answered. "I just need them to listen." They listened. And then they came. Not in the open, never that easy. Anonymous emails, messages under the door, a car idling too long at night outside the gate. The same red string tied around a new note. "You don't know who you're playing with." Samantha laughed once. Too hard, too sharp. "That's the point," she said. "They don't know who they're playing with either." But Leah could see the exhaustion in her mother's shoulders. Each letter was another reminder that truth had a price, and they were already paying it. The break came from the most unexpected place. The reporter who'd filmed her story, a woman named Alana Reyes. She showed up at the mansion one evening, holding a camera bag and 2 cups of coffee. "I'm not here for another piece," Alana said. "I'm here because something about your story doesn't add up, and not in the way you think." She pulled out a thin folder. Inside were photocopies, bank transfers, notarized signatures, everything Samantha had already found, plus one thing she hadn't: a missing page from the trust. It was a clause, written in precise legal language. Executor may transfer ownership of the property to any qualified guardian of minors, should the state fail to fulfill its obligations. Leah frowned. "What's that mean?" "It means," Caldwell said from behind them. He had arrived minutes earlier. "If the city ignored this trust, they violated its own terms. The property doesn't belong to them anymore. It belongs to whoever's protecting the children." Leah's eyes widened. "You mean—" Samantha's voice cut in, low, certain. "It means this house is legally ours." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Even the air seemed to wait. Finally, Caldwell sighed. "Then brace yourself, Miss Holloway. You just went from inconvenient to dangerous." He turned towards the door. "I'll draft the filings. But from now on, keep your lights on at night." That evening, as the sun fell, Samantha stood on the porch, looking out over the broken fence line. The city glowed faintly in the distance, indifferent, pretending not to see. Leah joined her, holding 2 mugs of instant cocoa. "You really think we can win this?" Samantha took the cup, her hand brushing her daughter's. "We already did once, baby. We're still standing." Leah leaned against her shoulder. "They're going to come for us, aren't they?" "Yes," Samantha said. "But when they do, they'll find the lights on." Behind them, the old house creaked. Not with fear, almost with approval, as if the ghosts themselves had decided to stay on their side. 3 nights later, a car slowed by the gate again. Its headlights cut through the dark, paused, then rolled away. Samantha didn't move. She just watched it go, her jaw tight. Then she whispered, "You can threaten me all you want, but you're not scaring my daughter." The house was silent again, and somewhere deep inside its walls, unseen by either of them, water dripped slowly through the old pipes, steady, patient, relentless, just like her. The week after the broadcast changed everything. For the first time in years, Samantha Holloway's name meant something. Not in the quiet pity of neighbors or the polite indifference of city workers, but in whispers that carried through office halls and dark parking lots. Leah noticed it first. Every time they drove downtown, heads turned. People looked, pointed, murmured. Sometimes they smiled, quick, nervous sympathy. Sometimes they didn't. Samantha pretended not to care. She worked harder than ever. Every morning she woke before sunrise, sorting papers, calling Caldwell, cross-checking records. Every night she fell asleep at the dining table with a pen in her hand. The mansion had stopped feeling haunted. Now it felt watched. 3 days after the story aired, Caldwell called with a warning. "Sam," he said, the first time he'd used her name like that. "They're moving faster than I expected." "Who?" "City attorneys. They filed an injunction. They're claiming the trust is fraudulent, forged by unknown parties to delay foreclosure." Samantha exhaled slowly. "Of course they are. They'll want you to withdraw your claim. You won't get another warning before it gets ugly." "Then it's already ugly," she said. "We're not backing down." Caldwell hesitated. "Then you'd better prepare yourself. These people don't threaten for show." She almost smiled. "Neither do I." That night, the house lost power. No storm, no warning. Just blackness swallowing every room. Leah screamed from upstairs, and Samantha was already running, flashlight in hand, heart pounding. "Leah!" "Mom, something's outside." Samantha reached the landing and froze. Through the upstairs window she saw them, 2 figures in dark coats standing beyond the fence line, motionless. Not watching the house, facing it. Her flashlight beam caught on the glass, reflecting her own pale face back at her. When she looked again, they were gone. She stood there for almost a minute, every instinct screaming, "Don't go out there." But she did. The cold slapped her awake the second she stepped outside. The grass was brittle under her boots, the air sharp. The street beyond the fence was empty, too empty. No footsteps, no sound, just the faint echo of an engine somewhere in the dark. When she turned back toward the porch, she saw the envelope. It had been pinned under the gate latch, edges wet from dew. She tore it open under the porch light. Inside was a single photo. Leah, taken from across the street, walking to school, backpack over her shoulder. Samantha's stomach turned to ice. Beneath the photo was another note, written in the same black marker as before. "Every light casts a shadow. Stay out of ours." The police came 2 hours later, after Samantha's call bounced through 3 departments before anyone agreed to send a patrol. They looked at the photo, made notes, asked the same tired questions. "Do you have any enemies, ma'am?" "Yes," she said. "Most of them wear suits." The younger officer tried to sound sympathetic. "We'll file it, but without a direct threat." "They threatened my daughter," Samantha snapped. He blinked. "Right, but they didn't say—" Samantha stepped closer. "You have kids?" He hesitated. "Yes, ma'am." "Then imagine opening that envelope with their picture inside. Would that sound like nothing to you?" The officer looked away. "We'll see what we can do." They left 20 minutes later. Samantha didn't watch them go. She already knew what "we'll see" meant. It meant nothing. The next day, Alana Reyes returned. She looked different. Tired, wary, carrying more than a camera this time, a folder bulging with printouts. "I checked something," she said, stepping inside. "You're right. The trust exists. Or it did. There's a record of a sealed account under the Rossini name, transferred to a private holding firm 3 years after his disappearance. Who owns it now? That's the problem. Alana opened the folder. The firm doesn't exist anymore. Dissolved, reabsorbed by a new company that popped up 5 months later, run by a man named Harris Cole. Samantha frowned. The city's financial director. Exactly. He's been skimming orphanage grants for years under shell accounts tied to the same name. Leah, listening from the stairs, whispered, "So the guy who's supposed to protect kids stole from them?" Samantha's face hardened. "And he buried the house that could expose him." Alana nodded grimly. "He's the one sending the threats, Sam. I'd bet my career on it." Samantha's voice was steady, too steady. "Then we expose him first." They planned it like a case. Caldwell handled the filings, Alana the press. Samantha gathered every scrap of evidence she had: letters, bank records, notarized papers, scanned them, duplicated them, hid copies in 3 different places. Leah watched her mother transform. The exhaustion didn't go away, but something else took its place. Purpose. "You're scaring them," Leah said one night, watching her pack a binder full of documents. "Good," Samantha said. "They should have been scared a long time ago." On the 4th day, everything cracked. Samantha came home to find the front door half open. The lock splintered. The air smelled of gasoline. She froze in the entryway, pulse thundering. "Leah?" No answer. Her world collapsed into one thought. Find her. She ran room to room, shouting her daughter's name until she heard it. A faint cough upstairs. "Mom?" Samantha nearly fell up the stairs. Leah sat on the floor beside her bed, eyes wide, clutching a wet towel against her mouth. The carpet was soaked, and a thin trail of smoke curled from the baseboard. "Someone poured gas through the window," Leah choked out. I smelled it and threw water." Samantha dropped to her knees and pulled her close. "It's okay. You're okay." Leah trembled against her. "They're trying to kill us." Samantha looked around the blackened room. "Then they should have done a better job." The fire department came fast, sirens splitting the evening quiet. The blaze hadn't spread far. Leah's quick thinking had stopped it, but the house reeked of smoke and burnt wood. Reporters showed up before the last hose was rolled. Alana stood at the gate, shouting questions over the chaos. "Do you think this was retaliation? Are you going to press charges?" Samantha didn't answer. She stood in the yard, soot-streaked, eyes hard. When Caldwell arrived, she handed him the binder. "Get this to court tomorrow," she said. "Sam, you need protection. You can't stay here tonight." She shook her head. "This house has survived worse men than Cole. So have I." That night, she sat alone at the dining table again. The charred smell thick in the air. Leah slept beside her on the couch, clutching her bat. The documents were gone now, safely in Caldwell's hands, but Samantha still kept the original notebook close, the one that started it all. She opened it to the last page, where Rossini's final entry was scrawled in darker ink. "They will burn it to keep it from being seen, but fire only clears the ground for what's next." Samantha traced the words with her fingertip. "You were right," she whispered. Outside, wind hissed through broken windows. The city slept, but the house did not. The ghosts weren't haunting her anymore. They were standing guard. Tomorrow she would face them all. Cole, the city, the lies. Tomorrow the truth would walk into court and take a seat. But tonight the house kept its vigil, breathing quietly around her, every beam and nail whispering the same thing. "You're not alone anymore." The courthouse in Brookhaven had never seen a crowd like this. Cameras lined the steps, reporters shouted over each other, and police kept the press behind a metal barricade. Inside, the air hummed with tension. Samantha Holloway stood in the center of it all, straight-backed and calm, though her hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. Leah sat in the front row behind her, clutching a folded piece of paper. Rossini's final note. Caldwell was at her side, his tie crooked, his briefcase bursting with evidence. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a reckoning. The city's lawyers came ready to bury her. They spoke in polished tones, smiling through their teeth. Your Honor, this woman's claim is baseless. The so-called trust she presents is a forgery, a fabrication designed to disrupt ongoing development. The judge, an older black woman named Patricia Green, adjusted her glasses. And yet, she said coolly, you brought an entire legal team for a forgery. A ripple went through the room. Caldwell rose. Your Honor, I have here notarized documents, dated transfers, and sworn statements confirming the authenticity of the Rossini Trust. We also have proof that the city redirected the associated funds into shell accounts managed by Director Harris Cole. Cole, sitting stiffly behind his attorneys, didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. Furthermore, Caldwell continued, Miss Holloway's discovery was not coincidental. Rossini's writings name this property as the cornerstone of a charity home for children, Casa della Luz, the House of Light, the very house the city has neglected and condemned for years. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Judge Green leaned forward. You're saying this house was meant for children, and the city, my city, suppressed it? Yes, Your Honor, Samantha said quietly. They tried to erase it. And when we found the proof, they tried to scare us away. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The quiet carried more power than shouting ever could. Caldwell presented everything, the documents, the bank records, even the photo of Leah that had been left as a warning. Each page turned into another nail in Cole's coffin. When it was Cole's turn, he took the stand with a smug confidence that cracked the moment the evidence appeared on screen. Transfers, dates, signatures. Money that had vanished into accounts he controlled. He tried to talk his way through it. Those were city reallocations, temporary holds. Caldwell's voice cut like a knife. For $3 million, Director? To temporary offshore accounts in your wife's name? Cole's throat worked, but no words came. The room erupted. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Leah looked at her mother, eyes wide. Samantha didn't smile. Not yet. By the afternoon recess, the world had already found out. Headlines flashed across the country. City official tied to stolen children's fund, mother and daughter uncover historic cover-up. When the court resumed, Judge Green's verdict was swift. The Rossini Trust stands as valid and binding, she declared. The city of Brookhaven is hereby ordered to restore all funds with interest and recognize the Holloway residence as a lawful property and operational center of Casa della Luz. Her gavel struck once. It sounded like thunder. Outside, sunlight spilled over the courthouse steps. Samantha stood at the top, Leah beside her. Microphones crowded forward, but for once, Samantha didn't shy away. This house, she said, was built by a man trying to make peace with his past. We found his truth, and we're not hiding it again. From this day on, Casa della Luz will be what it was meant to be, a home for children who have nowhere else to go. A cheer rose from the crowd. Cameras flashed. Leah gripped her mother's hand tightly, whispering, "You did it, Mom." Samantha looked down at her and shook her head softly. We did it. Weeks passed. The mansion was reborn. Volunteers came from across the city. Painters, carpenters, electricians. Donations poured in. Walls were cleaned, windows replaced, the roof repaired. The smell of fresh paint replaced the scent of smoke and mold. The laughter of children returned first, small, uncertain, then louder. The first residents arrived quietly, holding suitcases filled with almost nothing. Samantha greeted each one at the door, kneeling to look them in the eye. "You're safe here," she'd say. "This is your home now." The name Casa de la Luz was carved above the entrance in clean new letters, House of Light. And at night the mansion truly glowed, warm lamps in every window, as if the house itself had decided to stay awake forever. One evening, Leah stood on the porch, looking out over the city below. She was taller now, older in ways no child should have to be, but her smile was real. "Mom," she said softly, "do you think he knows?" Samantha joined her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Rossini?" "Yeah, that we finished it." Samantha looked up at the house, the restored windows, the painted doors, the garden full of laughter. "If he didn't before," she said, "he does now." A breeze moved through the trees, gentle and warm, and for a moment the sound almost felt like words, like a thank you whispered by the walls themselves. Later that night, when the lights dimmed and the children slept, Samantha sat in the dining room once more. The old notebook lay open before her, next to a new one with blank pages waiting to be filled. She picked up a pen and began to write. "For those who will never be invisible again. For my daughter, who believed before I did. For the ghosts who didn't want revenge. Just redemption." Outside, the moonlight touched the sign above the gate. Casa de la Luz. The house that once hid darkness now kept its promise, lighting the way for those who still wandered in it. And in that quiet, endless moment, Samantha Holloway realized something she had never allowed herself to feel before: peace